You know your political strategy has gone off the rails when one of the most establishment. Fuck. Oh, I'm sorry for whoever is below me. I'm so sorry. You can't hear me say I'm sorry, but I am. You know your political strategy has gone off the rails when even NPR, establishment NPR, doubts what you are putting forward as a story. What I'm getting at is the Trump and Russia collusion story that these guys initially started off with. Now, this narrative has morphed into maybe not collusion, but at the very least there was some kind of business dealing that went off the rails that we need to deal with. Again, I made the point that this was a Trojan horse narrative, that the point of the narrative was to create a kind of slow bleed from Trump while they dig into him and looking for other stuff. And at that point, they can slide away from the narrative of Russia collusion while throwing it out there, but not necessarily backing it up with anything. If you say it enough times, people start getting in their heads. But that's political strategy. That's not necessarily reality. And NPR, even NPR, doubts this particular reality because there's nothing there to make the connection between those things. Take a look at this. This is NPR's Russia investigations, a case still unproven. What I want to go to this part first. DNC and Clinton campaign funded opposition research that became the Trump-Russia dossier, Washington Post. Now keep in mind, they used that dossier in order to dig into Trump's, to spy on Trump. Now that's mind-blowing. Now, if this was the Republican Party doing this, heads would have exploded. So understand what's being said here. If it wasn't Obama, let's say it was George Bush, and George Bush was spying on his political opponent. Let's say that political opponent was Hillary Clinton. Heads would have exploded. Let's say George Bush was spying on Barack Obama when Barack Obama was running in a race against John McCain, and he used a fig leaf or something in order to create a narrative that he gave him permission in order to do this. So I gave him, let's say, a fig leaf in order to pull this off. Nobody would have believed that George Bush was being legitimate about this, but because it was Obama, they give him the benefit of the doubt. Media gives him the benefit of the doubt. They hate Trump's guts. And so Trump, Russia collusion, and the media runs with it. Fact of the matter is, the person who was of a different political persuasion was spying on his political opponent. That is amazing. But for whatever reason, this is not a bombshell. The DNC funded the Clinton dossier. Clinton and the DNC paid for the opposition research that created, you can say, the grounds for the political opponent to spy on the Trump campaign. All of this started with this dossier, with this dodgy dossier that was unproven and salacious. Beyond that point, take a look at this. This is my cloud reader. My cloud reader comes in handy when I want to show and make a point. After Hillary Clinton loses to Donald Trump, to a reality show host, people call her over and over again. Hey, Clinton, we're sorry you lost a reality show host. Oh God, it must suck that you lost a reality show host. It must be entirely painful that you lost to reality show hosts. And this was her response. I'm angry, Hillary told her friends, and exhausted. After two brutal campaigns against Sanders and Trump, Hillary now had to explain her failure to friends and its seemingly endless round of phone calls. I'm sorry you lost reality shows. God, it must suck you lost reality shows. How on earth did you lose reality shows? I mean, can I get you anything? I mean, man, it sucks that you lost reality shows. That was the talking toll on her already weary and grief-stricken soul, but mostly she was mad. mad that she lost and that the country would have to endure a Trump presidency. I'm sorry, it wasn't that the country would have to endure a Trump presidency. Let's be honest, she was just mad that she lost. There's a difference in those things. In other calls with advisors and political surrogates in the days after the election, Hillary declined to take responsibility for her own loss. She's not being particularly self-reflective, one long-term ally who was on calls with her shortly after the election. Instead, Hillary kept pointing fingers at Comey and Russia. It wasn't that you cheated Bernie Sanders. It wasn't that you didn't go to Wisconsin. It wasn't that you were the most hated person in this country, politically speaking, with the exception of Donald Trump. It wasn't any of those things. It wasn't that you picked Tim Kaine. It wasn't a list of other reasons. No, it was Comey and Russia. She wants to make sure that these narratives get spun the right way, this person said. That strategy has been set within 24 hours after her concession speech. Mook and Podesta assembled her communications team at the Brooklyn headquarters to engineer the case that the election wasn't entirely on the up and up, essentially in order to delegitimize the incoming president. For a couple of hours, with Shake Shack containers littering the room, they went over the script that they would pitch to the press and to the public. Already, Russia hacking was the centerpiece of this argument. In Brooklyn, her team coalesced around the idea that Russia hacking was a major unreported story of the campaign, overshadowed by contents of the stolen emails in Hillary's own private server in Bergoglio. Yeah, but that was her fault. Yeah, that was another thing. It wasn't that there was an FBI investigation hanging over her head. The press botched the email story for 18 months, one person told the room. They didn't botch the email story. If it was anybody else, you would have been in prison. Comey saved your life, or at the very least your life in a free world, not in a prison cage in a jumpsuit. Let's be very clear on this. My point in this is straightforward. The case on Trump and Russia was created by the DNC and Hillary Clinton in order to create a slow bleed in the incoming president, to weaken him and to delegitimize him. And it's served its job. It's done its job. Now, NPR, however, looking at the details of the story, is unconvinced. I love this. And they go through and poke holes in the various narratives. Usually I have Aaron Matei doing this. I don't have to get Aaron Matei for this one. NPR, establishment NPR, is doing it for me. Let's go through this pretty fast. The shifting sands. Political and legal danger for Donald Trump may be sharpening by the day, but the case that his campaign have conspired with the Russian attack in the 2016 election is still unproven despite 2 years of investigations, court filings, and even numerous convictions and guilty pleas. You will hear Democratic operatives make this case of Trump and Russia. Again, all of these people have a bias in this, and a vested interest. They have a dog in the hunt. The media loves the story because at the end of the day, they started their perspective of the story, and you can't repudiate yourself after 2 years of doing this case, unless they're going to turn around and say, sorry, we fucked up. They're not going to repudiate themselves. They're going to find any little tidbit of information and try to spin it from the standpoint of Trump and Russia, even though there's not really anything there. Also, they hate Donald Trump's guts, in which case they find themselves to be part of the quote-unquote resistance. And so the one story after the next comes out about Donald Trump, not to mention the fiscal interest in having these stories about Trump and Russia, this kind of international imbroglio between the president of the United States and supposedly a foreign power that's an adversary. Now, forget the fact that Trump has been sending weapons to Nazis in the Ukraine that have been using those weapons to kill Russians. Forget the fact that he's pulling out of treaties that Russia completely wants the president in. Forget the fact that he's been bombing Syria and his troops in Syria when Russia itself has a stake in Syria. They ignore all of this. They ignore this. Trump and Russia. To this day, you still hear these operatives out there saying it, and you still hear the media repeating it. Trump has been implicated in ordering a scheme to silence 2 women ahead of the election day in 2016 about an alleged sexual relationship they had with him 2 years before. That is a serious matter, or might have been in other times, but this scheme is decidedly not the global conspiracy with a foreign power to steal the election. Straightforward, to the point, flatly stated. He paid in order to shut up a porn star that he banged. This reminds me of the Clinton blowjob thing. Now, you have hypocrisy on both sides of this. The Democrats didn't think the Clinton thing was a big deal. The Republicans thought it was a major deal. And now the opposite is true. All of these people are hypocrites. But let's not get off the point. Flatly stated, he may have paid off a porn star, but that is not the same thing as him colluding with Russia in order to win the election. Charges they didn't make. Cohen ostensibly played a key role in the version of events told in an infamous, partly unverified Russian dossier, the same dossier that was paid for by the DNC in the Clinton campaign. Just so we're clear. Cohen led his interview on Friday on ABC News. Could the trip or a trip still be substantiated? Yes, maybe, but if it happens, would a man go to prison for 3 years without anyone having mentioned it? Let me read that again. But the news story didn't include a trip to Prague as described in the dossier. Nor did Cohen discuss that in his interviews on Friday on ABC News. Could the trip or a trip still be substantiated? Yes, maybe, but if it happened, would a man go to prison for 3 years without anyone have mentioned it? Meaning, if this was true and they sent him to prison, would they have sent him to prison without bringing up the fact that this trip took place? He's asking questions. He's doing what reporters and journalists should do. They should ask questions about this nonsense. Here's another one. Nonetheless, the crimes for which the feds want Manafort, this is about Manafort, to be locked up for aren't apparently Russian conspiracy to throw the election. However, Manafort took part in at least one event that has attracted endless discussion. On June 2016 meeting in which held that the other top campaign leaders hosted the delegation of Russians following an order to offer of dirt on Hillary Clinton. But Manafort's role in that meeting hasn't figured into any of the federal crimes or federal cases, nor has been subjected of court documents. Maybe the feds are holding all of that back for some big reveal, or maybe there's no conspiracy there. Which one is more likely? Right here, here's another one, further interference. If Manafort isn't in any legal jeopardy over his role in the Trump Tower meeting, does that suggest that no one is either? I mean, he's supposed to be the guy that was there, right? And nobody is prosecuting him for that. Is it possible that they're not prosecuting him from that because there was nothing there to prosecute in the first place? There were a lot of outside theories about that meeting might have broken federal laws barring U.S. political campaigns from getting opposition research from foreigners. Does the absence of anything about that in Manafort's case mean that the feds actually don't think there's anything there to prosecute? Probably. That's more likely. Here's another one. Does this former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn has been a very good witness, the feds say. They say it would be fine with them if he's sentenced on Tuesday. A judge gave Flynn no jail time. Does it sound like the attitude they would take if someone had been serving as a Russian factotum and who had been serving as a foreign agent from inside the White House as a National Security Advisor steps away from the Oval Office? And on it goes. Will the feds ever charge Trump's sometimes foreign policy advisor, Carter Page, whom they call a Russian agent, in the partially declassified application they surveilled him? The surveillance began under FBI Comey and was reauthorized under the Trump era, including by his own appointees in the Justice Department. That suggests it was yielding foreign intelligence, but Page has maintained all along that he did nothing wrong. Judging by the absence of any charges and his continued liberty, authorities appear to agree. But mind you, they had no issue charging Flynn, they had no issue charging Manafort, they had no issue charging Cohen. Why would they get skittish about charging Page if there was something there to charge Page on? Let's keep going. Investigators certainly know more than they're saying, is often repeated in the court appearances and the documents in the various cases. But an ostensible conspiracy between Trump and the campaign and the Russians who attacked the election is nowhere near close to being proven. Not only that, few recent events delay the verification of any Oval Office theory about a conspiracy. One important one is that Trump has signaled that he's open to clemency for people in the Russian imbroglio. I cannot pronounce that word. Imbroglio, yeah. All right, right here. If he opts to not prosecute people on whom he has evidence of wrongdoing, he simply writes what he discovers in a notional final report, the saga might end sooner, but amount to an abdication of justice. That doesn't seem like Mueller that America has come to know. Another thing that America has come to know about Mueller is that he can keep a secret. So if the evidence he has about a geopolitical conspiracy theory between Trump's campaign and Russia's active measures, the public probably won't learn about it until the moment the special counsel office wants that to happen. From what is visible today, however, the case is still Swiss cheese. Unless that changes in a big way, the hottest political story of a generation may lose its place in the center stage. The deep state can make Russia stick, Trump argues. And so his conspirators have gone on an expedition for other mud to sling. That, he hopes, will mean that none of it sticks. Well, that's not true. And understand what I mean by that. Bill Clinton got impeached over a blowjob. They will try to find anything that they can stick him with, whether that's business deals or whether that's with something that just pops up within the context of the investigation. Just because they can't stick him with the collusion thing doesn't necessarily mean they won't move on to something else that they can stick him with. Just saying. Fact of the matter is, people are making this argument that Mueller has stuff that he's holding on to that he just hasn't released yet. Because they need to justify not having anything there. This story, even NPR looks at this and says the story is Swiss cheese. I tend to agree with NPR on this. The Trump and Russia collusion thing is nonsense. And until there's some piece of hard evidence that makes the link between those two things, this channel will continue to take the perspective that it is nonsense. Thanks for spreading the word, Chuck Zlakin. That's a tough one. Chuck Zlakin. Thank you, Chuck. I appreciate it. Bernie voted for the infamous Reagan-Clinton crime bill. Oh, God. Oh, God. We're going after Sanders. This video is not about Sanders. And everybody's fighting over Sanders now. Bernie Sanders pushed Russiagate stuff. Unfortunately, yes, Bernie Sanders pushed Russiagate stuff. Mario, Hillary supporters are delusional. They're delusional for a point. They're delusional because it's in their vested interest to be delusional. It's just like the Trump supporters who was going after Obama, talking about he wasn't born here and then he was some kind of agent from some Manchurian candidate from some other country. It was utter nonsense. It didn't stop them from saying it because there were other words that they wanted to say that got stuck in their throat because they knew people wouldn't necessarily like it. In this case, the role is reverse. You have the Trump-Russia collusion theory, let's call it a conspiracy theory, and they're motivated to say the Trump and Russia collusion because they don't understand how the most qualified person in physical matter reality, all physical matter realities, lost reality shows. And not just that, they hate his guts. So it's easy to say, oh, Trump and Russia collusion. The reality of it doesn't matter as much because they hate his guts. Understand what I mean? All of these people are motivated to take a certain position on this. And in being motivated to take a position on this, when they talk to each other, when they complain to each other about Donald Trump, there's certain things that they say that they don't necessarily have to think critically about because they're not motivated to think critically about. They hate his guts. They think he's a monster. So, Trump, Russia, collusion. It's easy. Reality doesn't need to apply to the situation because they don't necessarily need reality to apply.